What's up guys, it's me Deshaun. Today we're going to be talking about how Soul Eater and Fire Force are connected. I made a video a long time ago and it's pretty outdated due to some recent reveals in the Fire Force manga. I actually planned on making a video on whether or not Fire Force was the prequel or sequel to Soul Eater, but unfortunately I never got around to making that video in time before the Fire Force ending, so I'm actually going to include some of the things that I was about to say in that video in this video. So I hope you guys enjoy. So if you've been reading the most recent chapters of Fire Force, obviously the latter half of the manga, the climax, or the last few chapters of the manga, we get a lot new information. In my previous video, I briefly mentioned how Shinigami and Akishin were in series like Soul Eater and Beichi, and how Fire Force and Soul Eater and Beichi share universal concepts such as madness exists in all three worlds alongside Shinigamis and Kishin. So the first thing that I want to talk about is obviously madness. Madness exists in all three of these series, and if you've read them, you should be familiar with all of them. Shinra actually gets swallowed by madness in Fire Force, and Haumea actually talks about madness referring to the evangelist and her malevolent aura. Yohei from Beichi worked at this factory known as the Happy Factory, but it turns out they're actually known as the Fear Factory, and they're developing a giant robot. And obviously they're going to destroy everything with this giant robot, so Yohei actually developed a madness chip to make this robot go crazy. So yes, just in case if you haven't seen my previous video on this topic, all three of them are connected. But for now, we're solely going to focus on how Soul Eater and Fire Force are connected. So it is confirmed that Fire Force is a prequel of Soul Eater, and Soul Eater takes place in a long, distant future. We don't know just how distant of a future this might be, but just know that everybody from Fire Force is obviously dead. The world of Fire Force is definitely ancient history in comparison to the world of Soul Eater. To give you a good idea on just how ancient it is in comparison to the current modern day times of Soul Eater, the Great Old Ones appeared 800 years before the world of Soul Eater actually takes place. But not only this, Shinra actually makes the first Shinigami or makes death. It is not known whether or not this is the same death that appears in Soul Eater, but it's most likely an ancestor of the Shinigami that is in Soul Eater. The death that Shinra creates actually started the order that is being maintained in their world. But he then decides to leave and disappear from it. This is the first Shinigami. But at the end of Fire Force, the Shinigami that is in Soul Eater still exists in this world. So that right there kind of makes it hard to say that they're the same character. I know there's the argument that you could say, oh, he says the same phone number from the death in Soul Eater. But just because they might share the same phone number, that might not mean that they're the same Shinigami. Because when a new Shinigami comes to Earth or is born, they then die. And this is exactly what happened to the Shinigami in Soul Eater when Kid became a true Shinigami. So more or less, Shinra did not make the Lord Death that we know and love from Soul Eater. He more or less made the race of Shinigami or Reapers, and the one that he created is Death's ancient ancestor. Could Shinigami have probably left Earth and then came back? Who knows? It might be the same Shinigami, it might not. Another connection between Fire Force and Soul Eater is the fact that the same moon that we are seeing in Soul Eater was actually created by Benimaru, and Shinra created the sun. It seems like the sun and moon actually have a meaning behind them. The moon more or less represents the despair, while the sun on the other hand represents hope, as it always smiles, just like Shinra. The sudden appearance of the moon was a sign that the cataclysm was going to start, and with the appearance of the sun, Shinra gave everyone hope again. And it seems like together both the sun and moon symbolize balance when it comes to both of their worlds. That is why it is such a big deal when the sun finally appears in Fire Force. But not only this, when we look at the moon in Soul Eater and Fire Force, it turns out that the actual eye of the moon might just be the same crater that Charon made in it when he reflected Nataku's blast. Now, a more obvious connection between Fire Force and Soul Eater would be Excalibur. He exists in both series, and in Fire Force we just so happen to see a younger version of him. Excalibur is not only the first weapon in Soul Eater, but he is also the strongest and oldest. With Excalibur being the first weapon, this would also make Arthur the first weapons meister. And it also seems like a lot of the techniques in parts of the Fire Force power system actually serve as a basis to Soul Eaters. The most obvious one would be Shinra, Sho, and his mother all performing the very first Soul Resonance. The Breath of Life technique in Fire Force is actually the basis of a Soul Wavelength, and it is in the ending of Fire Force, Arthur actually names this new Breath of Life that he's feeling the Wavelength of Souls, and this would lead to the origin of the Soul Wavelength. It also seems as if the Adala Link is actually the basis of the Soul Resonance. What I mean by this is the Soul Resonance is a more proficient version or evolved version of the Adala Link. When it comes to an Adala Link, the person that is inside of the link is connecting to someone or something. When Shinra is first learning how to use an Adala Link for himself, Benimaru tells him to become one with the earth and calm himself. I've never felt anything doing this, so I always just fell asleep. Shinra then says, feel the earth, focus my mind, become one, and sleep. This is exactly what Tsubaki does when she tries to connect to the Uncanny Sword, and this is also no different than Maka, Kid, and Black Star all trying to connect by synchronizing their soul wavelengths, closing your eyes, focusing your mind, and becoming one, and eventually making that connection. Shinra at the end of Fire Force not only makes Shinigami, but actually creates the world of Soul Eater as we know it. And this is the reason why the world of Soul Eater is so bizarre, because he recreated it that way. Inca just so happens to be the very first witch to exist in the world of Soul Eater. And it is more than likely the witches of Soul Eater are descendants of both Inca and Shinra. Kid from Soul Eater was actually made to be based off of Shinra, because Shinra was the hero who saved the world of Soul Eater long ago. Another more obvious connection would be that the Saint of Despair is actually an ancient Kishin that existed way before the world of Soul Eater. At the very end of the Fire Force manga, we finally see Maka's mom for the first time, and it turns out that Maka as a child would read about the world of Fire Force and the actions that took place thousands of years ago that occurred in the world of Fire Force. Now I just wanted to drop a quick video for you guys to show you how Fire Force and Soul Eater are connected. It is official, Fire Force is now the prequel to Soul Eater. Now there are definitely more ways in how both these series are connected, but I just couldn't fit all of them in this one video because honestly a lot of it's a lot more intricate and requires a lot more explaining. So if you guys want to see more of those videos, make sure you hit subscribe, like the video, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.